I remember when I first made the decision to start a YouTube channel, I struggled over what I should name it. I decided on Enough with the Crazy because honestly, I am just tired of how absolutely insane much of our society has become. From politics to sports, from mainstream news media to entertainment, it seems that everything has gone crazy. Common sense is a rare virtue anymore. Proven, established scientific logic and fact is no longer recognized so that one's ideological perceptions can be validated. Maturity in a person's emotion and conduct has been replaced with undisciplined childishness and societal temper tantrums. And most concerning to me is how uneducated, biased, personal feelings have become that which defines what truth is, when in fact, truth should define how we think and feel. In the most simplistic terms, our personal ideological perception should not be the basis of what it is that we believe truth to be. In reality, unbiased, substantiated truth should be the basis of that which dictates our beliefs. So, Enough with the Crazy seemed like the perfect description of what the point of my channel is because I am simply done with how stupid many things have become within our society. With all of that said, I come to the issue of how the Democratic Party openly plays its supporters as useful idiots because this crisis of individual feelings overruling facts empowers them to do so. On Thursday, August 22nd, the Democratic National Convention ended, and I was once again amazed at how so many people are blind as to how much they are being played as fools. So, to reveal just how the Democratic Party knowingly plays its supporters as useful idiots, I want to begin with the video clip of Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Speaker of the House from 2007 to 2011 and from 2019 to 2023, speaking about what she calls the wrap up smear. Now, in the context of this video, she is claiming that this is a tactic that the Republican Party uses. However, what I will do is take us through some of what was said on just the first night of the DNC to prove that this tactic Nancy Pelosi talks about is actually the tactic Democrats use in their effort to play their own constituents as useful idiots.
Call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident. But I think I'm worth the trouble.
So, as we listen to her explain the wrap-up smear, she basically states that first the party publicly, but also quietly, promotes a lie. Now, they know that most people don't follow politicians like the news outlets do, so once they knowingly make a false claim, they wait for their supporting news media outlets to pick it up and broadcast it. They do this because it is important for the effect that it seems as if the news outlets discovered the information on their own. Now, when their supporters hear those claims from their preferred news outlets, they immediately feel that the information is validated because it is reported as fact. Once that happens, the groundwork of the lie is validated to the people because of the news media, and the party politicians then inundate themselves into the news programs to talk about how the information is true, further validating the lie to those who support their party. This allows them to look like the champions of righteousness coming forward to fight against the evil oppressor. This strategy is effective because these politicians know that the majority of their constituents do not want to hear the truth about anyone they oppose. They know that the people are all too willing to believe anything they are told as long as it feeds their biased, presupposed, ideologically based beliefs. Now, although Nancy Pelosi was claiming that it is only the Republican Party that uses this deceitful tactic, how does she then explain the Trump-Russian collusion accusation by the Clinton campaign? After all, the conclusion of the 4-year special counsel investigation into the matter resulted in the fact that no such thing occurred. It was a fabricated lie by the Democratic Party to hinder Donald Trump's 2016 political campaign. This is what was reported by an ABC News article dated 5/15/2023. It says, That Crossfire Hurricane investigation would later be handed over to special counsel Robert Mueller, who in March 2019 concluded there was no evidence of a criminal conspiracy between Mr. Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia. This initial false accusation was made by the Hillary Clinton for President campaign and the Democratic Party and was relentlessly reported as true on all liberal mainstream media outlets. How is that not the very definition of this wrap-up smear tactic she spoke about when their claim concerning Donald Trump was absolutely untrue? And how about the Hunter Biden laptop story that was continually and adamantly claimed to be a lie by the Democratic leadership and all liberal mainstream media outlets like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, as well as those liberal shows like The View, etc.? Not to mention, of course, all the liberal newspapers that also claimed that it was not true. They all knowingly and relentlessly claimed that it was disinformation fabricated by Donald Trump and the Republican Party to discredit Joe Biden during the 2020 presidential election. Yet, according to a New York Post article dated June 22, 2023, the FBI verified the authenticity of Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop in November 2019, and a federal computer expert assessed it was not manipulated in any way. IRS supervisory agent Gary Shapley told Congress in explosive testimony released Thursday. Now, keep in mind that the presidential election took place in November of 2020, and although the laptop was verified to be true a year earlier in November of 2019 by the FBI, Joe Biden, the Democratic leadership, and the liberal mainstream media continued to claim throughout all of 2020 and beyond that it was a Trump-instigated lie he was using to hopefully gain an advantage against Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Now, who in their right mind would think that the Democratic leadership promoting Joe Biden for president was not fully aware of the laptop's existence since it was verified by the FBI a year earlier? Once again, we see this wrap-up smear tactic being used by the Democratic Party to purposely deceive their constituents by falsely accusing Donald Trump of fabricating the laptop story as a lie and to knowingly use the consistent gullibility and lack of willingness of their constituents to seek the truth for their own political advantage. But let's go into the recent DNC and evaluate things they have said to show whether this tactic is still their modus operandi. Because after all, if my political party is playing me as a useful idiot, I would want to know about it. So let's begin with Michelle Obama's speech to see if she makes any claims based upon her expectation that Democratic constituents are so blinded by their own bias that they wouldn't notice the clear hypocrisy in anything she says. This is one part of her speech wherein she was talking about the hope Kamala Harris is bringing to the country. She says, "You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father did not aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to strive if everyone else around us was drowning. So, my mother volunteered at the local school. She always looked out for the other kids on the block. She was glad to do the thankless, unglamorous work that for generations has strengthened the fabric of this nation. The belief that if you do unto others, if you love thy neighbor, if you work and scrape and sacrifice, it will pay off. If not for you, then maybe for your children or your grandchildren." You see, those values have been passed on through family farms and factory towns, through tree-lined streets and crowded tenements, through prayer groups and National Guard units and social studies classrooms. Those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Kamala Harris and I built our lives on the same foundational values. So, this is a lot of the feel-good talk that seems to be the focus on what the DNC was centered upon. After all, there was no policy reveal on how the problems our country is facing will be fixed. Yet did you take notice when she said concerning her parents, In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. And when she concluded that those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Yet, according to this article by Market Realist dated March 5th, 2024, her and her husband Barack share a combined net worth of $70 million. Now, how is that in line with the quote unquote values she claims she holds onto from her mother that folks shouldn't have more than they need? In fact, according to a ThoughtCo article dated February 4th, 2020, it says that less than a year after leaving office, former President Barack Obama came under fire from fellow Democrats when it was revealed he was being paid $1.2 million for 3 separate speeches to Wall Street groups. That's $400,000 per speech. The $400,000 appeared to be Obama's standard fee, as he had already been paid the same amount for a conversation with presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, the UK's Independent reported. And now, what about Michelle Obama herself? According to an article from the New York Post dated September 26, 2023, former First Lady Michelle Obama has reportedly walked away with nearly $750,000 after giving a 1-hour speech on diversity and inclusion in Germany on Monday. For her speech, Obama was paid 700,000 euros, which is roughly equivalent to $741,000, two unidentified sources close to the conference organizers told the Daily Mail. Isn't this once again Democratic leadership expecting people to believe the lie that she holds to the value of not taking too much when others do not have? After all, at what point does it not become evident that these Democratic politicians just think that their supporters are too stupid to see the hypocrisy that is right in front of their faces? And what about all the other things that were said during just night one of the DNC, which were so blatantly false that even the anti-Trump liberal CNN network put out a fact-checking article to point them out? Here's the opening paragraph of the CNN article dated Tuesday, August 20th. Democratic state and federal office holders, including President Joe Biden, delivered some false, misleading, or lacking key context claims on the first night of the Democratic National Convention on Monday. Now, again, remember that this is the extreme anti-Trump, extremely liberal CNN reporting this. So, for them to publish a fact check on these falsities, it must be clearly established to the world that these things have been openly proven to be untrue. It goes on to report that Biden repeated misleading claims he has made in previous speeches about billionaires' tax rates and foreign trade. He also overstated the extent to which his efforts to fight climate change are expected to reduce U.S. carbon emissions in the next decade. He made an outdated claim about the number of Americans with health insurance. And he omitted key context about his administration's infrastructure building efforts, framing distant goals as if they were already achievements. In his speech, Biden said, "We used to import products and export jobs. Now we export American products and create American jobs right here in America." Fact first, this claim is misleading. So far this year, the United States has imported more goods than it has exported, leading to a seasonally adjusted trade deficit of more than $567 billion, according to figures from the U.S. Census Bureau. In fact, the goods trade deficit has widened since Biden took office. In 2020, the nation's goods trades deficit was $901 billion. After Biden's first year in office, it increased to over $1 trillion and has stayed above that threshold every subsequent year. Speaking earlier in the night, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois denounced former President Donald Trump for having presided over a loss of jobs without mentioning the critical context that the losses occurred because of the COVID-19 pandemic that caused a global economic crash. A video played at the convention similarly left out important context on the respective job related records of the Trump and Biden Harris administrations. Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow falsely claimed that the Supreme Court has made Trump completely immune from prosecution, significantly overstating the court's recent ruling. Representative Robert Garcia of California misleadingly described Trump's widely criticized 2020 comments about the possibility of scientists studying the use of injected disinfectant as a COVID 19 treatment, wrongly saying Trump had instructed Americans to inject bleach. Ohio Representative Joyce Beatty praised the Biden administration's effort to provide larger tax credits for families and lift more children out of poverty. Joe and Kamala have been expanding the child tax credit, and let me just tell you, cutting the poverty rate for our children, she said. Facts first. Beatty's claim needs context. It's true that the expanded child tax credit passed early in the Biden administration slashed the child poverty rate in 2021. But the benefit only lasted for the 1 year the temporary enhancement was in effect. Child poverty increased in 2022 to a rate roughly comparable to where it was in 2019. Now, with there being so much evidence out there revealing how, like in these examples, Democrats consistently mislead their constituents, one has to wonder just how it is that they retain such support from their followers. Well, I believe it is simply because liberals exist within the confines of their ideology, and they know that if they had to acknowledge truth, it would destroy the credibility of their beliefs. Hence, to create the means for their ideology to survive, they must adopt the application of selective memory, or else they would have to deal with how truth would force them to denounce their beliefs. After all, as we have just heard from this recent DNC, they are still falsely accusing Donald Trump of things they claim about him, as does also, in many cases, the liberal mainstream media. With no regard for the truth, they continue to openly promote false narratives to mislead their constituents. To this day, and perhaps rightly so, I don't know, the recent conviction of Donald Trump for sexually abusing and defaming a woman back in the 1990s is still spoken about and used to defame him. However, why is it that when Tara Reade came forward about how she claimed Joe Biden sexually abused her back in 1993, it went nowhere? The mainstream media never speaks about it, and it got quickly swept under the carpet. Yet what was the difference between the two women accusers? Why did the Democratic Party only support Donald Trump's accuser and not Joe Biden's? Do Democrats really defend the believe all women narrative? Or is it only those who come against their political opponents? After all, Donald Trump's accuser was believed and strongly supported by both the Democratic Party and the mainstream liberal media. But Joe Biden's accuser was crucified by them. As another example, how is it that when Joe Biden's daughter's diary was revealed and she publicly verified that Joe Biden used to take showers with her, no one in the Democratic Party or liberal media seemed to find that egregious enough to stand against, or to even remember? Well, once again, it is because liberals cannot accept truthful information, because if they did, they would have to discard much of their ideology. And truth be told, nothing is more important to them than their ideology. Hence, they are quick to disregard any information that would challenge that. Yet, let's take a look at this excerpt from a Snopes article dated May 14, 2024, concerning Ashley Biden's diary and the truth about what is clearly despicable behavior from a father. It says, an often cited page from that leaked diary, which chronicled its author's addiction recovery in intimate detail, makes reference to sexual trauma and poses questions in search of an explanation for being hypersexualized at a young age, along with mentions of not liking to visit a certain family's house, being sexualized with a female friend, and having sex with friends at a young age. The author noted, taking showers with my dad, probably not appropriate. Now, After being very open about the trauma of being hyperly sexualized at a young age, and then verifying your father was one of those who was doing that to you, how is it so easily discarded to where no one in the Democratic Party will even acknowledge this young woman's abuse? Clearly, being truthful with their constituents is just not something that the Democratic Party practices. But still, the reason they get away with telling blatantly misleading information to their constituents is because many of their supporters just want to believe whatever enforces their biased ideological beliefs rather than the truth. All of these examples show how openly reliant the Democratic leadership is upon the utter gullibility of their constituents to accept what they are told. Regardless of how often they are openly proven to be lying to the public, they know they can continue to use their constituents as useful idiots for their cause because they are sure that their constituents want to believe whatever it is that supports their already established bias. Now, I personally believe that each of us should always vote our conscience. But when we look at the present condition of our country and in how many Americans are struggling to live day to day, shouldn't our votes be based upon what is actually true and not upon information that is fabricated? Why, as voters who have the power to elect leaders who would actually benefit our country, would we continue to allow the politicians we support to knowingly use us as their useful idiots, especially after we discover how mindlessly stupid they expect us to be? One of the freedoms that this country provides is the freedom for politicians to play their constituents as fools. The good news, though, is that we also have the freedom to not allow them to play us that way. Regardless of which side of the political aisle one sits on, we should all possess a deep enough sense of self-respect that we would stop being a useful idiot to anyone who apparently has no respect for us. So look, with how bad the country has fallen within these last 3 years, with how difficult it has become for people to afford to live day to day, isn't now the time for people to stop allowing themselves to be played as a fool by politicians? How much worse does our economy have to get before people realize that they need to stop being so easily used by politicians and stop allowing their ideological biases to dictate their votes? People just need to return to being voters who rely upon truth over propaganda before things get worse for us all. So that's it for me today. Please don't forget to punch that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, share the video with others if you agree with my thoughts, and make sure that you hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button, as doing so would help me to grow the channel. For those of you who have already subscribed, once again, I would just like to say thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. So as always, I just like to say God bless you, and thanks so much for taking the time to listen. Until next time.